Hour. Welcome very much to this episode of the Tech Hour. My name is Francisco. I'm one of the trainers in Creatio Academy. And today we are going to talk about smart navigation in Creatio, particularly about how to build and configure sidebars in Creatio. To help me in this task today, I also have my colleague Robert Block in this Tech Hour. Robert, say hi.
Hi, guys.
There you go. Thank you, Robert. Sidebars are a very easy tool to use that everybody will be able to configure at all skill levels with no need for advanced developer skills. What we are going to be discussing today, for example, is basically what are sidebars, what is their purpose, basically, how do we enable and create sidebars so that they can be used, and then we're going to see a few options and also how to use some permissions for these sidebars as well. Okay. Speaking of this, they give you the opportunity to create an accessible way to display a created page with any tailored data that you can create in Freedom UI, including as well your business rules or processes, and then access it by simply clicking the buttons on the top right of the Creatio user interface. Let me show you some examples of this, okay? Just give me a second. Let me just change my window. All right. So, sorry, let me check my notes. Okay, so this is something that already exists since our 8.1.3 version of Creatio. And in its current version should be already enabled by default. But let me show you what do we have on our side. So sidebars are these features that we have here on top. For example, we have here our notifications panel, where we have our standard tabs, for example, for reminders, for feed notifications, for approvals, and others that come by default with the Creatio environment. But we can also create some customized ones for different purposes. For example, to check, as in this example, the contracts that we may have at that moment by its type, or how many are already signed, how many are still in draft, for example. And these can be added as the new sidebars that you can customize to your liking into this existing notifications panel. Or you can also create them, as I have a second example here, as a standalone panel as well that you can also open by itself. And you can also create then different versions of whatever sidebar panels you would like to create. So you can actually do that like this in this example, or you can also do it inside one of the existing panels as well. So it's up to you to decide. Okay, so this is just an example so that you can see how it works, but I'll show you how do we work with it and how do we create it. Okay. Now, the first thing we need to check or need to know is to verify if in your version of Creatio, this is already enabled by default or not. Okay, so let me just make sure that I'm seeing your, there we go. So to be able to check this, one very easy way to access those settings and verify if they are enabled in your system or not is simply here in the top part of your screen in the URL, after the /0/ part, if you type, for example, flags and just press enter, you should be redirected to the app feature list page for your environment, where you'll find a lot of different options that we can enable or disable as features for the environment. In our case, for example, if this, for example, doesn't work in your version, there is another way of doing this, which is basically, instead of just clicking flags, is introducing this part of the URL directly. So it works either with just typing flags or just pasting this part here into your URL after the /0/, so that it opens this page. Okay. Now, Once you have this open, this feature toggling page, this is where you can check then which features are enabled or disabled, and giving you also the possibility to change their status for some of these features. And for the specific purpose of our training of our hour, we'll need to search using this search bar here on the top, near the top left of the page, for the following features. If you are still using an older version of our system, for example, in version 8.1.3, you can search for side panel extensions, and this will give you that option. In my case, it doesn't show because I'm not in this version, but this, if you are in the still in the 8.1.3 version of the system, would give you that option to toggle. In our case, if you have any other version after it, after 8.1.3, you'll need to actually search for two options, one called sidebar extensions. There you go, this one here, and verify if it is already enabled or not. So if it is not, obviously you can simply click on this checkbox to enable it. And other than this, you need also to search for show page add-ons. Well, this is probably enough. There you go. Show page add-ons properties panel. Okay. Once you have this one as well, just verify once more if it is already enabled. If it isn't, then just simply enable it to have access to this feature as well. Okay. Once that is done, once this is done, if it wasn't enabled, for example, you can simply just click on it, and then you just press Save All to register that change. Okay. Now, great. Since that we now have ensured that this feature is enabled, let's see how we start creating a sidebar page. Now, this is done in a very similar way as we normally do for our normal form pages or list pages, using our Freedom UI Designer, but using the specific format for the sidebar pages. But before we start creating the page, we need to understand what will be the purpose of the page so we know where to create it. So as an example, if you would want to have a sidebar page to display which type of contracts you currently have, or how many are in draft status, or how many have been signed, for example, as in the example that I have in here, right? It would make sense to create this from within the order and contract management app that you will find in your application hub. So if I go to my application hub here and open it, we have in this example environment a lot of different applications already created. And if I want to have a sidebar page to display information about contracts, it is logical to make it inside this already existing application because the data is already there. It'll make it easier. But this does not mean that you have to make it inside this page. You can actually do it in any other page if you want to, and then reference whatever you need to other objects if needed. But for this purpose, the easiest way, obviously, will be to do it inside the same object where the data already lives. Okay, so once you are inside the application hub for your chosen application, as we are right now, in my example here, the order and contract management app, you should then open the Pages tab inside Application Hub. And then once you are here, to create that new sidebar page, you simply need to click on New Page. This will open the page menu, where the page selection menu that you can select which type of page you want to create. And if you are already using the latest version of our Creatio user interface, please ensure that you are using the web pages options here on the top and not the mobile app pages. This is for other purposes, not related to what we are doing right now. Okay, this is all the different versions of pages for mobile devices. Okay, so in here in web pages, we can now select which type of page do we want to create for our sidebar. And in our latest version of the environment, we now have a dedicated template, let's say, for sidebar pages directly here. So you can simply mark it to choose it, and then we would click the select button here on the bottom right to apply it and start creating our page. Now, one small note to this, as I was saying before, if you are still using an older version of Creatio UI, you may not yet have this sidebar page option available in your system. If that is your case, you can also use an alternative option, which is using a blank page to build your new sidebar. Okay, as this option can also be used as a sidebar page as well. I will show you actually how this will work in a moment. Let's just finish first the normal template, then I'll show you this option as well. Okay. For now, let's make sure that we've selected the sidebar page option correctly, and then click select. There you go. And now the Freedom UI Designer appears, the one that you are probably already very familiar with if you've ever created a form page or a list page, and will then allow you to build your sidebar page.
Francisco, I'm so sorry
Yes.
for stopping you, but the screen which you're sharing is quite bright, and I'm not sure if we can see all the details. Could you please
Right.
try to reshare it again? Because I believe
Sure.
that is something with
No
sharing.
problem. Let me see.
Yeah, it is just very bright, and
Let me see. How can I make it less bright? Actually, just give me a
so
second.
I believe you can just, stop sharing and share it again, and maybe that will
Okay.
help this kind of reset.
Let me try that and see. Okay, let me reshare it. How about now? Is it better or?
Okay, it is still very bright. I'm not sure,
Hmm.
guys. Leon, Damien, can you see it also very bright, or maybe that is only on my screen? We'll see, but
Damien, Leo, if any of you can just confirm, or is it too bright for your viewing as well, or right,
okay.
but still visible? Okay.
All right. Yeah, so let's
Well,
continue. I believe if that is visible, it's fine. So yeah, let's
okay,
continue.
we'll just move on. I'm sorry for that. I don't know how could I actually make it less bright in Zoom. I'm sorry. But let's continue with this and let me know if there's any other difficulties watching this, okay? So as I was saying, I'll show you also the option on how to create this without the sidebar template in a moment. But for now, here in the Freedom UI Designer, we can then start building the page, the sidebar page, using all the elements that we normally have in our library, in our designer, adding widgets and components, etc. We'll actually do that in a moment. Before that, let me just go back to our pages part here and show you that second option that we have when we are creating a new page. So if I would click on new page, and instead of going with the sidebar page, I click on the blank page, sorry, and click select. This will give me another tab where I have now a blank page to start working with. I would have obviously to add the areas and the columns, etc., to start building my page as one does if we're starting from scratch in a blank page template. But if you notice here on the page settings to the right, I have this option in the advanced portion to use this page as a sidebar. And if I click and toggle, let's say, this option, I will then have the option to manage that sidebar parameters, as I also do in the normal sidebar template option as well. So this is just to show you that, yes, you can use one or the other to start building and constructing your sidebar page as you prefer. If you have already the sidebar template, perfect, then half the job is done. Basically, you can just start adding your components. If you don't, then you can also use the blank page as an option. Okay. Now, so going back to the sidebar page template that we have here, the first thing that we will do, as we always should, is to start by naming the page that we are building with. So in this case, I will give it a title. In this case, it will be, for example, contract status, just to give you a glimpse on how to build the same thing. And as we usually should always do as well, you can use the same name, for example, for your code, not forgetting to keep your prefix in the beginning. I'm just using the generic one, USR for user. But if you have your own prefix, please keep it there. So it helps you identify which elements are created manually by somebody or by a team. And then just use, for example, the same name to identify the code of this page. Once you have this done, then you can actually continue building the other options.
And here, Francisco, I have a question. Actually, why do we need to type this title and code again? I mean, as we did that in page itself.
Yes. So what Robert is mentioning, thank you, Robert, is that here, when I actually have to click on the manage sidebar parameters, I am asked to insert the title and code again for the sidebar. In reality, this happens because we are actually configuring two different elements. One is the page itself that we are preparing inside the corresponding object. So this is for the page itself that we are preparing. And the other one is the sidebar element itself that everyone will see displayed in the user interface. Although it may seem that we are repeating the title and code for the same element, in reality, we are not. They each have its own title and its own code. So we can even use the same title and code or different ones. For example, they live actually in different objects. They live in different parts of the system. So in here, for example, I can repeat it. For example, I can even use the same name and the same code even. Second, oops, is there without spaces, etc. And well, actually, I'm doing this inside the same object, so it doesn't allow me to save it. But if you just put, for example, a 1 or a different name, or just remove a letter, it'll save this all inside the same object correctly. Now, in terms of the location of the sidebar, you have different options. You can select, for example, where do you want this new sidebar that you're creating, where do you want it to reside? For example, if you want to add it to your communications panel or to your notifications panel, that is the two options that you have available to add it to the panels that already exist. Or alternatively, if you prefer to have this sidebar as a standalone panel at the top of your working area, like I showed you in the beginning, you can also leave this option blank, and this would create a new panel for you, like in the example that I showed you earlier. So if I go back here, for example, this one, for example, is one of those examples that does not reside inside the communications panel or the notifications panel. So you can also create additional options here on the top menu simply by leaving this option blank. It will create it as a standalone panel. Okay. In this example, for what we are creating right now, I will actually leave it attached to the notifications panel because I think it would make more sense for this example. Now, of course, if you want to, you can also specify an icon for your new sidebar page. For example, I will choose maybe this page icon in here. And now for the sidebar position setting that you have here on the right, here's what we need to consider. As a default, the positioning in the sidebar menus, like for example, in here or here, right? These positioning and the order that they are presented in here is determined by default by numbers. In this case, where 1000 is the lowest configured one. So 1000 corresponds to the position 1 in the menu. It even tells you here a small explanation of that. Okay, so this position 1000 would actually be the position of this first item inside the notification panel. Okay, if you want to place your new sidebar before the position number 1, all you have to do is type a number that is lower than 1000 to place it before the position number 1. Or if you want to put it between two positions, let's say between position 1 and 2 in the menu, all you have to do is type in any number between 1000 and 2000, and that will place it there. Okay. I see that we have also a question. Okay. Oh, Robert is answering my questions. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Robert. There you go. Yes. If you have any other questions, just please feel free to put them in the chat, and Robert will do his best to answer them, or just ask them in vivo if you want to, just unmuting yourself. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, or I will be interrupting you, Francisco. Like, answer
That's
the question.
fine. No problem whatsoever. So as I said, the positioning then is defined by which number you use, considering that 1000 is position 1, 2000 is the 2, 3003, and so on. Okay. So now, in the current version of our Creatio user interface, we can also create something called operation permissions codes. In order to make this specific sidebar that we are creating right now, visible only to the users or roles that would have permissions to view it. Okay. As an example of how this would look like, I have actually previously created an operation permissions code to give visibility of this panel only to the sales department users. Okay. I will show you the difference on how this acts once we finish setting this up. So let's finish setting this up. I'll show you how it works, how it normally works, and I will show you the difference of what we can do if we actually use one of these codes in here. Okay. However, and this option can also be used in other elements that are not included as part of this tech hour as well. Those codes can actually be used in different elements. If you want to know more about operation permission codes and how to use them, then obviously feel free to use all the resources we have in Creatio Academy website as well. Okay. Now, another option that is can also be modifiable via code is the option to display or hide the notification mark automatically. By default, it will hide the notification mark automatically once it will be hidden once we click the option. So once I click here on this reminder and I open it, it will delete the notification mark that is in here. But this can also be arranged differently via code. Not something that we will cover in this demonstration, because again, we are showing you what we can do with no-code tools. But this is also something that you can also explore later on using our resources online. Okay. Once you have this all set and everything is perfectly defined for what you want, then you can simply click on Save, and that will adjust, let's say, the parameters for your sidebar as we want to. Now, all I have to do is start building the sidebar itself with whatever elements that I want. For example, you can, for example, add a donut chart from our widgets here in our library. I can simply add it to our sidebar page. And then just simply normally configure it as we would with any other type of page. So for example, I'm just going to click the chart settings button very quickly. I'm going to give it a title. For example, contracts by type. I'm going to select the object for this, which will obviously be the contract object, which is where I have my information. I will also group it by my option type, my column type. There you go. Now I can start seeing some examples in here. And I could actually customize it even further by sorting it by different groups and different ways as well, adding filters, etc. For now, I'm just not going to do any of that. Just to give you an example, this is the basic functionality for our widgets as well that we have normally in the system. You can also then customize it, obviously, with different colors if you want to, and different types of styles if you want to, just to have that information a little bit, visually more refined. Okay. Once you have this done, you can simply click Save. and that will add that chart, let's say, to your page. Okay. Now, let's say, for example, just have something more in our page. Let's say you would also want to display the contracts by status, for example, this time using, for example, a metric, for example. So let's add a metric here below. Actually, I'm going to add something else before, because I want to add two metrics. So I'm going to just, as I would normally do in our system, just add here a two-column space, for example. And now I'll add a metric to one of these spaces here and configure it quickly, for example, to show me how many of my contracts are still in a draft status and how many are in signed status. So by default, it just tells me the total amount of contracts that I have there. I can give it a name, for example, here, contracts in draft. Okay. And then I can configure the filter, in this case, by the column status, to be obviously the ones that have the status draft. Okay, and then it tells me that it's only 11 in this case. Okay, again, I could build different things as well if I want to. I'll just put some more or less the same style that it was before. Let's make it a fully colored one, for example. And then once I have this chart, I can save it. I'm adding it to my page. And let's just add one more now for the contracts that are in signed status. So I'll add a new metric. In this case, obviously from the same object. And now my condition will be that the status will be equal to signed, so that I can see how many are signed. I can call it as well, for example, signed contracts. And I'll have more or less the same, visual things. I'll make it a different color, actually, instead of having the same color. That make it this one, for example. And once I have everything ready, I can save it as well. And there you go. I'm adding elements to my sidebar page as needed. Okay. Now, for the title here itself, it will usually pick up the title, as this is a template of the sidebar. So whatever you put in the title of your page will be replaced here and give you that title as well in the sidebar. So basically, you can add whatever elements you want in here to make it more complete and to have all the things that you want. For example, you could also add buttons for different functionalities. I'm not going to do it here, but I'm going to show you then an example, a finished example with buttons as well. So you have all these options available. You can build the page as you would normally do for any other page using Freedom UI Designer. Okay. Once you have everything done, let's say this is just a small example, you can click on Save to save then your new sidebar page in, there you go, in your environment. And then just to verify if everything is correct, you can go back to your normal user interface, just refresh it to make sure we load the latest modifications we did. And now I will have a second option because I had already created one by example. And now you can see I have created a second option with you live for this new sidebar page. Okay. So this is the way that you have to create different things. We can still use the widgets that we have inside as we normally would in a normal page. For example, I can open them further to drill down on these results and have different information displayed in here. If I needed to see it in more detail, I can close it back again. Same thing for the drafts. It can tell me which items are in draft status, so I can jump directly to those contracts and work with them, or which ones are already signed. So this works basically exactly the same as we would in any other page. Okay. Now, if you remember what I said earlier, we had also an option when we were building our new designer, our new sidebar page. We had also this option in the parameters. Sorry, let me just refresh this so that I can also have access to the parameters. We had this option of using an operation permission code to actually make this whole sidebar, for example, visible if we want to specific users or specific roles, as also another way to control who has access to these sidebar. Maybe you don't want the sidebar to be available for everybody, but just for specific roles. So in this case, in here, I will now paste a code that I've created earlier, which is basically a code that allows or will make this sidebar only visible to the people that belong to the sales department. Okay, this is the one that I've created as an example, giving access only to sales department users. So if I add this code here to my sidebar parameters, and I simply click save, and now I click save as well in my page, and I go back to my user interface and refresh it, I should have one of these sidebar panels that I've just created disappearing. So if I go back to my sidebar, as you can see, I have my example one, but the one that I just created with you has disappeared. Why? Because my supervisor user that I'm using for this environment is not part of the sales department. Okay, so only people in sales department would be able to see that sidebar. To show you this, let me give you a glimpse of how somebody belonging to let me just change my page as well, because you're probably not seeing what I'm doing right now. Let me just change the sharing. So if I open a new in private page and I simply very quickly grab, just give me a second, the beginning part of the URL of my environment, this part here, right? And press enter. I'm just using an incognito page just for the purpose of not messing up with the access that I already have for the supervisor. And now I can actually log in as if I was somebody else, okay, using it in private or an incognito page. In this case, I'm going to use somebody that I know belongs to the sales department, which is our fictitious user, Alexander Wilson. And I will use his login credentials to enter the
And
system as if I
sorry,
was Alexander
Francisco,
Wilson.
for
Yes,
interrupting you,
tell
but
me.
right now we can see your shirt screen, or not. Okay, it's the same. Because for the moment it
Sorry.
was like without that bright issue, but now when
Uh-huh.
you logged in, it's again the same. So never
Uh,
mind. Please
Sorry.
continue. Sorry for
It
this.
was probably just because it was in a dark background. Maybe it will help with that.
Maybe, yeah. Anyway,
Sorry.
sorry.
No problem. So, as I showed you earlier, that disappears, right? But if I now enter the system as Alexander Wilson, as you can see, that second one that I have just created that has that restriction that I just added appears for Alexander Wilson. So Alexander Wilson, as part of the sales department, is able to see that new sidebar that I've created. Everybody else that does not belong to the sales department cannot. Okay. And that is also the purpose of that setting, to
And
make it visible or not.
And
Yes,
sorry for interrupting again, but
that's fine.
actually here I have a question because
Mm-hmm.
okay, it's good that, for example, we can set up the visibility of this particular site by depending on the role.
Mm-hmm.
But my question is it possible to do the same, but only for the particular element on the sidebar?
Right. Great question. Yes, of course, Robert. Yes, it can be done. So let me very quickly revert what I've done so far, just to have it standard for everybody. And then I'll show you another way to control specific elements inside the page. So just give me a second. Let me just reshare again the other page that I have, which, well, let me close this one first. And let me reshare it.
It's always like this, like you have 10,000 different windows and so on, and
Exactly.
have the whole control board.
Exactly. So if I go back here to my settings, let me just again refresh it and remove that restriction that I had before. There you go. So now everything is back visible to everybody as it should be. All right. And now if I just refresh it as a normal supervisor user, so as anybody that would be joining, yeah, there you go. I have both options in here as well. The one that I already had as an example and the new one that I just created. Okay. Let me show you now actually in the one that I've created initially as an example. As you can see, this is the visibility that we have for everybody, right? So everybody can see these elements, the contracts by type, the signed contracts, the contracts in draft as well. But actually, let's imagine that I would want to have a specific feature inside the sidebar page that will only be accessible to specific roles or users. So everybody can see the page, but there's like one element or one information inside that I can also that I would like to control depending on the roles or the user that will be seeing it. I can control that with the help, for example, of business rules. Okay, so for this example, I'm going to show you the Freedom UI Designer. Let me close these ones so that it doesn't get confusing as well. I'm going to show you the Freedom UI Designer of this pre-configured page that I had already, just to show you that I actually have configured already, as for this example, a business rule inside this page to give permissions of showing a button that I have there only to the people belonging to the sales department. For example, our friend Alexander Wilson, as we said before. Okay, so Alexander Wilson, as part of the sales department, will be able to see a button that I've added to that environment. Everybody else does not see it, cannot see that button. Okay, so let me show you how this is done. I simply created a business rule inside the page saying that if the current user role contains, for example, so the person that is using the system at that time, if the role of the person using at the system at that time is part of the sales department, then you can show the element of the button new contract in there. So I want to view, if I am part of the sales department, an additional button to allow me to add a new contract to the system if I wanted to. If I'm part of that team, I can also do that. So let's see how that works. I have this already created. I have created this business rule already. So now let's do the same as I've done before, simply going through an incognito page and log in again as Alexander Wilson. Let me reshare it on that screen so that you can see it as well. I think I probably still have it here. Yes. So again, I can show you that if I am Alexander Wilson and I log in into the system, or anybody belonging to the sales department in this case, and if I open, once this opens, there you go. If I open my first option in here, you can see a difference. You can see that there is a new button appearing only for Alexander Wilson because he is part of the sales department. So I can make these elements to show or be hidden depending on the business rules that I create.
Oh, Francisco, sorry for interrupting. I'm not sure if we can see this particular button here.
You can't see the button?
No, we can't.
Should be. Let me just quickly. Maybe I didn't share it. I'm sorry for that. There you go. Yeah, I wasn't sharing the page.
Now it is visible.
I thought I was sharing the page and I didn't. That is my bad. Sorry for that. But yes, once you are here as Alexander Wilson and logged in, as you can see, Alexander Wilson that belongs to the sales department has a new button that everybody else cannot see, right? This is just because I've created the rule that to allow the people in the sales department to see this button so that they can actually create a new contract directly from this page as well. So this is how you can also use business rules to control the elements inside the page and just display whichever elements you want to specific users or specific roles as well, giving you that freedom as well to create it as you wish. Okay. So this is all simply, obviously, an example of what you can build using the sidebar pages in order to improve and customize your navigation in the system. Since you can use all the elements that are usually available to other page types like form pages or list pages, the possibilities here really will depend on your imagination and also on which purpose this would make sense for you to use. Okay.
And sorry, another
Yeah.
question again.
Yes.
So, okay, that looks actually great. I mean, that we can create a new sidebars and so on, depending on our use cases and so on. Even Damien asked what are the best practices for this. So, of course, I believe we already covered in all Creatio products like the best use cases and so on.
Yep.
So actually, question about exactly this sidebars which already exist. Can we actually do something about them, like modify them and so on?
Right. You mean so for the options that are already here, like for example, our reminders or all of these other options that are already here? Well,
Yep.
the correct answer that I can give anybody about this topic is technically it is possible, but there are two or three extremely important points to consider in here. First of all, most of the options that are pre-existing in here are part of the base packages of Creatio, and actually most of them are even still created in classic UI. Let me show you an example. For example, this reminders page. Actually, let me just again reshare and go back to my admin privileges page. So let me quickly close this and reshare it. Sharing, if the button will work. There you go. Okay, I believe you are now seeing it. So as I said, if I can now go here to my reminders and open its designer page, for example, because as an admin, as a system administrator, which is the user I have there, I can do this. You can easily see that this page does not give you options in the settings, does not give you that many options to customize what you have in here. And it even tells you that this element is set up using source code, using the page source code. So even if you can make these customizations in these panels, you will really need to know how to work with the page source codes to ensure that you do not break the tool for everybody, for example. So unless you really, really need to customize something in the pre-existing panels and if you do have the sufficient knowledge and permissions to do it, ensuring nothing malfunctions, if you cannot have all of these preconditions, we would not recommend altering them directly. If really needed, it would be better to consult first with your developers in your companies, for example. And if needed as well, they can also consult with our teams to better understand how to implement those modifications without breaking anything. Okay. So, of course, if you want to know how to work with the source code for this or for any other type of modifications, we would obviously recommend that you register as well for one of our development trainings that we have regularly, where you will be able to dive deeper into the code options of the system as well. Now, some of these options, for example, I can close this one here, but some of these options may give you some possibilities. For example, I know, for example, here at our feeds tab in the communications panel, if I open the designer page, it does give you some options in here to slightly customize it, because this is done already. This feed part is done in our Freedom UI designer. It's not in classic UI anymore. So in this case, it does give you a few options to slightly control its behavior. Okay. But again, if you would need something more in depth, if really, really needed, please go through your developers, and they can also consult our teams to make sure that everything works fine and we can those modifications can be easily implemented. Okay. Other than this, I don't think we have anything else to cover about this functionality today. We have arrived to the end of this brief introduction to the sidebar navigation options in this tech hour. So if you have any other questions or doubts, or if you need to clarify anything that you have seen today a bit further, feel free to contact the Creatio Academy team, and we will gladly answer your questions as well. I would also like to thank you all for your participation today, and also thank you, Robert, for your help and for your insightful questions as well.
Thank you, Francisco.
Thank you. I will also like to take this opportunity as well to wish you all a happy 2026 for everybody. Thank you very much again, and goodbye. See you soon.
Thank you, Francisco. Bye.
Thank you.